Emmanuel Marino here with RPGamer, and I am standing next to
Josh Sawyer.
Josh Sawyer from Obsidian.
Yeah.
And what's your role on Pillars of Eternity?
I am the project director and lead designer.
Great. So you guys have been showing this great demo, like sort of an early first look at some of the early scenes. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're showing? I guess I don't want to sit here and describe it for like 10 minutes.
Sure. It's the first few areas of the game, and it's basically just the introductory areas where the characters are coming into a series of ruins. Well, actually, they're not going into the ruins, but they're coming near them. And that's the danger, is that in this region of the world, these ancient ruins are very tempting for treasure hunters and things like that. But the locals consider them sacred, and they guard them with their lives. So it's kind of about how you and the caravan come into that area and find yourself in a predicament because of your proximity to these ruins.
Great. And one of the most interesting things was your sort of little interstitials, so there's a little bit of dialogue and some nice hand-drawn artwork. Is that your approach to cutscenes in this game?
Yeah, we do some sort of more traditional, well, I guess there's lots of traditions, but so we do some of the actual cutscenes where it's characters moving around in real time on the screen, but then we also use the interstitials and scripted interactions as little storytelling moments where they're illustrated, they have sound effects with them and sometimes some voiceover, and that's more just kind of storybook-like. And we can do a lot of fun stuff with it, and we felt it was appropriate for this kind of more old-school type of game.
Yeah, I noticed. It gives you a big sense of imagination in a video game, which, people accused rob you of imagination. There's a lot of theater of the mind going on there.
Yeah, well, a big tradition for Obsidian is in writing. And if you go all the way back to Black Isle, which is where I started, especially in games like Planescape Torment, there was a very heavy emphasis on describing things through the text. And we wanted to bring that back. So in those cutscenes and things like that, we describe various scenarios you go through, what the characters are doing within the scene. But again, it's more like you're reading a book in those circumstances. So hopefully people will enjoy it. We think our backers will.
Yeah, you mentioned tradition, and I think that's really good to hear because it feels really old, but feels really new and modern at the same time. It's a weird mix. So I'm kind of like, oh wow, that's really nice, some great graphics, some nice interstitials, but then it just feels distinctly Infinity Engine.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you got that impression because we really do put a heavy emphasis on look and feel. We want people to feel when they sit down with it very, very comfortable, like they're coming back to these old games. But we also know there are going to be a generation of new gamers that are playing it and people that haven't played an Infinity Engine game for a long time, or they just don't understand D&D rules. So we wanted to make sure that how the game was presented was very welcoming to the sort of old guard, but for the new players, it felt fresh. And if there were any sort of stumbling blocks in UI or things like that, we want to make sure that we smooth those over.
I know one thing we didn't get to take a look at was character creation, which was, I know it's really in-depth and you guys are crazy detailed. Can you give me a little of a background on that or just a little rundown of it?
Sure. Well, it's not dramatically crazy compared to I guess the one nice thing is that unlike the Infinity Engine games, you see your character in the world right away. So in the caravan, when you start, you actually have a view of your character standing within those ruins. And as you're building your character, you can actually see that character there. Otherwise, it's fairly traditional in a lot of ways where you pick your character's sex, you pick their race, what culture they're from, what class they have. It also determines some of your starting gear and things like that. You distribute your attributes. If you have any special class things like your spells or your animal companion or things like that, you pick those at the beginning of character creation. And portrait and sound set, that's the other important thing. And of course, you can customize your portraits as well. So yeah, that's a very popular thing in the old Infinity Engine games was people would take portraits of fantasy artist stuff, or they would make their own portraits and then put them up there. So we offer support for that as well.
What I found interesting is that you're still building your character's history even as you start playing the game. So we noticed that you're telling your background to someone and that sort of affects the rest of the course of the game and how people perceive you?
Yeah, not in huge ways, but little minor bits of things that you build into the story. So in character creation, you do pick your character culture and your background, but then you elaborate on that when you talk to Kalisha at the beginning. She asks you various questions and you can flesh it out. If you want to, you can just be like, I don't want to talk about it. You can do that. You can just shut her out. But otherwise, it gives the player the opportunity to build a lot of personal character moments and stuff like that.
You guys are looking to release later this year, right?
Yep, winter of 2014.
And so how much left is there to do? I can imagine this game is massive, so you guys have a ton left to do. But
well, in terms of core content, we are in beta right now. And there are a couple of little features and things like that we're still doing. We still do have some dialogue to write, but all the areas are built. all the maps are rendered out and everything like that. We still have to do a painting pass on those because we do hand touch-ups on all the 2D assets. And sound effects and music we still have to do. But mostly right now, I mean, most of the past week, after the E3 demo was done, it was all bug fixing. I had hundreds of bugs, and I was just fixing bugs and assigning bugs to people. So we are actually right now in fixing and polishing mode, which is a good place to be.
So now that you have all that done, how massive actually is this game?
It's a very big game. It's not... it is not as big as BG2.
Okay.
I don't want people to
All right, fair enough.
chill out. It's not that big because BG2 is one of the biggest RPGs of all time. But it is much bigger than Baldur's Gate 1 and much bigger than Icewind Dale. So I think we have a little over 140 maps. Wow. So there's a lot of stuff to explore, and yeah, hope people enjoy it.
It sounds like you guys are putting that Kickstarter money to real good use.
Well, we size is very important for a game like this. You look at even the smallest Infinity Engine game, which I guess would be Icewind Dale, still had like 80-some maps, and it took a long time to play through. So we knew that it was very important that we find out how to build maps very quickly at a very high level of quality. So we made it a priority very early on.
And not only that, though, but big, but also highly replayable, too.
Yeah, we want to allow players to go through it with different characters, different companions, and in different ways, because a lot of our dungeons, we want to allow people to kind of traverse them in different ways and with different approaches. So hopefully, get a lot of replay out of it, and it's a big game just on its own, even if you only play it once.
Thank you for your time. This is a game I think all of us at RPGamer are really looking forward to.
So. Thanks for dropping by.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. That's it. See you guys around.